Hey everyone, it's Braulio Rosa with the Broward Bar Buzz. Today I'm happy to have a good friend here with me, Kelley Uustal's managing partner, Peter Spillis. Welcome, Pete.
Good afternoon. It's good to be here under the lights finally.
Finally, as we were saying, you get to hang out with me as we watched a shiny head. Hopefully it's not too shiny here. So you've been practicing law a long time, and we wanted to learn a little bit about you. So tell us how it all got started.
Well, I came out of law school and I went immediately to work for an insurance defense firm. At the time, it was one of the big insurance defense firms in the state. It was called George Hartz and Lundeen. And it was a neat and unique time because they had so many different kinds of cases and so much different work from very low end to very high end that they just threw me in and I was able to do things. So I was working up slip and fall cases, and 1 year out of law school, I got to go try my first jury trial, first chair. And I was so young, I didn't realize that that is not necessarily the norm. That a lot of people fight for a long time to be able to get into the courtroom. And there I was, a year into it, and then sort of never looked back. So I was able to do that at the same time that I trained under a pretty legendary defense medical malpractice attorney. So I got to learn some of the higher end stuff, med mal work in particular, that ended up being more of a focus in my career as I went forward.
Did you enjoy working on the defense side?
I did enjoy it. It was all I knew at the start. And like any business, you go into it, you're surrounded by the people that have been doing it for a long time, and you fall into that culture. It becomes a way of life. And so I learned a lot. I made great friends, not only professional friendships, but clients as well. I mean, it was a lot of years of growing up around that environment.
How many years did you put in on the defense bar side?
Oh, I hate to admit it. You're going to make me do the math?
No, okay. At least a decade,
Yeah,
over a decade.
No, it was more than 20.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so during that time, obviously, you were honing your skills with more senior people initially?
Yeah, initially. As I said, got to train under just some kind of legendary guys and against some of the most legendary guys and girls, some of whom are still out there swinging away, So I got to meet them as young attorneys. I got to see the very best in the business. That's one thing I've noticed is there are all kinds of different lawyers, and there are great ones in every different field. But boy, I'll tell you, you do medical malpractice work, and you come across the best trial attorneys you're ever going to see. So it was a heck of an education to be able to sit in the room as a young attorney and watch some of the best in the business on both sides go at it, and then be able to progress to the point where I was the guy in the arena and I was going up against some of these folks.
So I'm assuming you would recommend to young attorneys to find that lawyer, that senior, that heavy hitter that can be a mentor.
Oh, critical if you can, if you're fortunate enough. And by the way, speaking of that, I know we've got a Broward Bar program that seeks to do just that, right? Get younger, either law students or young attorneys, a mentor, somebody that they can really learn from. It's such a great tool if you can get it.
Yeah, and I would say, since you're plugging that I would think that sometimes young attorneys in their firms maybe might feel uncomfortable asking that senior lawyer some questions that maybe they think in their head. And I bet you the senior person doesn't feel this way, but maybe the younger attorney might think, I'm going to look silly or dumb not knowing maybe this. And so maybe having an external mentor also, like at the Broward Bar, could be helpful. Someone that is disconnected from your firm so that you feel a little more confident in saying, hey, how do I do this? Or what's this?
Yeah, absolutely. And guess what? You can't have too many mentors. So hopefully the person at your firm, there's somebody there that's taking you under their wing, mentoring you. But if you can have somebody outside too, all the better.
Yeah. I mean, the practice of law there's so many aspects of it for a lawyer. And I guess depending on what type of practice you carry, I mean, there's the professionalism that we're discussing off camera and being a zealous advocate that's professional. But then there's the business side too. So if you have your own practice, there's the business side and generating, referrals and getting people coming through the door, because you could be the greatest lawyer, but if you don't have clients.
Yeah. And guess what class they don't give you in law school? That class.
Exactly.
It's not there, right?
No.
That's the stuff you've got to learn on your feet when you're out there in the real world, figuring out how am I going to create my book of business? How am I going to grow my practice?
And that goes to, you were talking about like attorneys that maybe aren't so professional. And so I think, me personally, and I want to hear your opinion a moment on this, there's nothing wrong with being kind and amenable with people. I think that you would generate more respect and goodwill from opposing counsel and folks out there. And it also means that if there's a referral and they don't do that kind of practice, they may send you that referral because they respect you.
Well, I couldn't agree more that there's nothing, not only is there nothing wrong with being professional, you used the word kind. Kind is tricky because we are in an adversarial business and we do fight hard for our clients. But professional and respectful is absolutely, not only can you do it, but you should do it. And you're right, you hit on something. I get people who call me to send me cases who are people that I tried cases against. That wouldn't happen if I was unprofessional, if I was hostile, if I was disagreeable for the sake of being disagreeable, right? If I was a fire and brimstone attorney that was win at all costs, scorched earth. We've all seen attorneys who have done that. In my experience, the great majority of those don't pan out in the long run, or even if they find success along the way, they do it at the expense of the reputation, of goodwill in the community. And frankly, I don't know how you wake up in the morning and put your shoes on and go to work every day living that kind of life. I mean, it's just not fulfilling.
No.
So there's no reason to do it. And example after example is out there of the best in the business, the most successful attorneys out there who are professional, decent people who fight hard but fight professionally. And that's just critical.
I'd bet that your greatest compliment, the greatest feeling is when opposing counsel, someone that you have fought that good fight with in the courtroom, sends you a referral because they respect you.
It's certainly meaningful. It does tend to validate the way I'm doing things when that happens.
Yeah. So you did defense for years. We won't say how long, although we may have already revealed. And then you transitioned over to the other team, plaintiff side. Talk about that.
Well, I had always considered myself a trial attorney. I didn't consider myself a defense attorney. I thought I was a trial attorney because that's what I did. I, from a young age, was able to get into that courtroom, and I loved it. And I got to a stage where everybody knew in my firm, if you need a case tried, call me, I'll try the case. I didn't care what it was. I just wanted to go try the case. That's what I enjoyed doing the most. And so because of the circumstance I was in, I was doing that on the defense side. And along the way, I started building a career, And so you get sort of, that's your environment. It's what you're used to. The client base builds, your book of business builds, and there you are, and you're in a nice, comfortable situation. And it would have been pretty easy to stay comfortable and just keep doing that. But I always thought I didn't want to miss an opportunity to grow. And I always thought, as a trial attorney, I'm only seeing half of it if I'm just defending cases. There were challenges on the defense side, but there were also good things about the defense side. But I just knew that somewhere in me, I wanted to advocate for people, not for big companies. And as the more time went on, the more success I had in the courtroom on the defense side, the more I would find myself thinking about, is this all there is? It's not that fulfilling. The money's good. But waking up in the morning okay, here we go again. So I started feeling a little bit of that tug, and that tug grew some over time. And then it was a matter of circumstance. Bob, Kelley, and John Uustal, in essence, came knocking one day. And when they knock, you listen. They had built an unbelievable firm. And I thought, well, I'm certainly going to talk to them, and we're going to see where this leads. And that's what I did. And long story short, I said goodbye to that world. I said goodbye to all those clients and all my partners who I very much enjoyed. And I made that leap.
How long have you been at KU now?
I think I'm in my 11th year now.
Yeah, you've been there a while.
Yeah. Seems like yesterday. It really does.
Well, were there any surprises when you came over to the plaintiff bar?
Yeah, there really were. And it's something that I talk to people about now, because you spend your side on one side or the other, and you know that side, and you form some opinions about the other side. And it turns out they're not always so accurate. So one of the first things I realized when I started doing the plaintiff's work was, it's kind of easy to demonize the other side. And so as a defense attorney for all those years, I was pretty jaded about the motivations of those plaintiffs' attorneys, and it's just about the money, and they're just trying to get all this big paydays, and it's just kind of the way you think about it when you're over there. It didn't take long at all. In fact, it didn't take more than like the first case that I was responsible for and the first set of clients that I met to make me realize, oh, I kind of got it wrong there. Because what you learn pretty quickly when you're doing plaintiff's work is people are coming to you, especially these big catastrophic cases that we handle. People are coming to you in their worst moment. They have suffered the worst, most unspeakable tragedies. And you're it for them. If you don't come through for them, they don't have another option. And so you immediately, you develop a personal relationship with these people, and you feel a sense of responsibility. And it's that sense of responsibility that ends up keeping you up at night, that ends up keeping you there late in the office in the evenings, doing anything you can to get the best result you can. It's not, oh, I need to do this so I can get a couple more dollars in this settlement. It really isn't. And you don't really appreciate it until you're there and you've got these people who are depending on you. So that was definitely an eye-opener, something I just didn't appreciate from the other side.
The human side.
Yeah.
Can you, I'm guessing you have to be cautious. Can you elaborate on any case that just like hit you in the heart that you really...
Yeah, this is really just off the top of my head, but there is a case, and I'll leave names out, but our poor client, who his sister and father are the ones that found us because he didn't have the mental capacity to speak to us. But his misadventure started at an FSU football game. Somebody drunk behind him, FSU scores, and they push him, and they don't realize that they're drunk and they're pushing him too hard, and they actually injure his vertebrae, which would have been okay and a survivable injury, but he goes to the hospital, and in the hospital, they make a number of errors, and I won't bore you with the details, but the long and the short of it is he almost died, but didn't. He survived, but he had terrible anoxic brain injury. And now, to this day, he lives in a state of sort of perpetual here and now, right now. He knows his name, and you can say hello, and you can meet him and introduce yourself, and you walk out the door, and 5 minutes later you come back in and you'll have to reintroduce yourself. He cannot function in society. His father and mother, who were at retirement age and slowing down and looking for those golden years, they then became his full-time caretakers. And they wouldn't have been able to do that on their own, right? So they had to get some help. They had to have somebody get what this gentleman needed to live a dignified life for the rest of his life. He was only in his 30s, right? And so, you go into their home, you sit in their living room, and you meet this gentleman who doesn't really know who you are, and you meet him again 5 minutes later, and he doesn't know, and it's heartbreaking. It's heart-rending. And so you want to talk about being motivated to do something for somebody. Well, you sit in that living room, and you come out of there, you'll have all the motivation you need. So that's one.
Wow. And it's now when I think of it, there's a comedy, which now it's not funny. I mean, it was 50 First Dates or whatever, where the woman...
Oh, sure.
Same kind of scenario, but, she's not as bad, but she forgets after the 24 hours.
They somehow made it funny, but imagine that in real life. Yeah.
It would be terrible.
Yeah.
Every moment, you meet someone, you talk to them, and 10 minutes later, you got to start all over again. That's horrific.
Yeah, really bad.
So that goes to what I was saying to you off camera, that sometimes people will be negative about attorneys, but for guys like you that are fighting the good fight for these folks, these people would be forever in a terrible situation. They would have no resources.
Like I said, that ends up, when you get a little window into it, you realize that's a much bigger driver than any paycheck you're going to get. Yeah, it can be pretty powerful.
What would be a misconception that plaintiff attorneys have about the defense attorneys?
Well, along the same lines, I understand why. I'll tell you the why in a second. But there's definitely a tendency to demonize the other side from the plaintiff's bar as well. Here's the why. It makes perfect sense when you think about it. Once you're here and doing work where we're representing, the little guy against generally the largest companies in the world, the largest insurance companies in the world, unlimited resource, you realize it is a David and Goliath way of life. And it is a David and Goliath feeling that you have every day. I mean, you're just out there swinging away against unlimited resources. And so you develop a siege mentality. You have to, right? Because you're outgunned. You're never going to outspend the other side. You're never going to outman them. They could throw as many attorneys as they want on these bigger cases. So you just got to outfight them, basically. And, you do that year after year, and you see some of the bad actors, especially, that make it even worse on the other side, because let's face it, there are bad actors on all sides. You do that over time, and there's no way to survive other than to have that siege mentality. And so part of that, then when you're living that, you tend to then I think human nature to demonize that other side and assume always that they're doing things with the worst of intentions. So I try to stop myself when I see me doing it and try to remember I did that work and I wasn't having the worst of intentions. I was fighting hard for my client, but I like to think I always tried to do it in a professional, ethical way. And especially when I'm dealing with, the best attorneys on the other side, I'm not, there's all kinds of attorneys out there.
Sure.
The good side about doing these big catastrophic cases is that usually we have the best attorneys on the other side, which you might think, oh, that's bad. You don't want to go against a good attorney. But it turns out the best attorneys on the other side are also the ones who know what they're doing and the ones who are professional. And so you know what you're dealing with, right? And so two good attorneys can usually work most things out because we all know what we're entitled to, what we're not entitled to, and what the big fight is about, right? So I'm going up in a big case against a really good attorney. Sometimes when I get that discovery request or I get that response to something I did, it's pretty easy for me to start demonizing and saying, ascribing the worst of intentions. And I try to pull myself back a little bit and say, there's on his side, he's got his own issues to deal with. He's got his own client to represent. And don't do that as the first thought, is to immediately ascribe terrible motivations to the other side. Now you got to be on your toes because sometimes there are bad folks out there, right? And we're never going to just let that slip, right? So you keep one eye open. But I think it's just important to try to maintain that perspective and try to stand in those shoes for a minute, right? Just to give yourself a little bit of clarity on what's really going on.
So Pete, you're the managing partner at Kelley Uustal. Can you talk a little bit about your practice?
Sure. So I run the medical malpractice team there, and all the partners there will handle medical malpractice cases, at least some. But I run the group and I'll see each case that comes in. I'm generally involved in the decisions on all of them, on whether we'll take them or not, which is in itself quite a thing. It's another eye-opener, another thing that I didn't realize. The phone rings more for medical malpractice cases than any other kind of case. But we also decline more medical malpractice cases than any other kind of case because they're just so difficult to bring. And you've got to have everything right. You don't get any cheap settlements on medical malpractice cases. They don't throw you money because they feel bad for you. They will make you fight and try every case. And so we don't take a medical malpractice case unless we believe we can actually try it and have a realistic shot at winning it.
Out of 100 calls, how many do you think you'll take?
I can tell you the real math. As of I think last year, we tried to run the data a lot. 97% of the calls, wow, don't even turn into investigations in the medical malpractice ones.
That's a good point. Investigation. It's not even, you haven't even accepted it yet. You have to investigate it.
Right. Now, look, a lot of those are people just calling up saying, something trivial.
Sure.
And it's not even, it doesn't even have to get to me. Our intake people know enough about it. But a good percentage of those are, we at least want to talk to them and make sure we understand what happened. And for any number of reasons, there's a whole list of reasons, the great majority of those we just simply can't even take on to investigate. So it really is a low acceptance rate. And it should be, right? Yeah. Because we're not in the business of bringing frivolous medical malpractice claims, even if we could. So, and everybody deals with the medical system. And so everybody has bad experiences because medicine isn't math, it is an art. And the human body is not a machine, and it doesn't always act the same way in the same set of circumstances. So there's a lot going on there, and every bad outcome is not negligence, and we have to explain that a lot. But when it is, we want to be there to do something for that family.
Yeah. I was just in the hospital, as you know, a few months ago, and I could see where there could be problems. And thank God, I'm fine, but there are a lot of touch points with a lot of different people touching, and it could definitely go sideways easily, very easily.
Right, and you can see that you're right. It's a busy place. The nurses coming in, the consultants coming in, the techs, orders get entered, orders have to get taken off.
Correct.
A lot of things. It's a symphony, and it all has to go the right way.
Yes.
And when it doesn't, terrible things can happen. Yeah.
You know what else? And this is just like it's not comic, but it made me laugh when I was there because I kind of knew where this was coming from. But it's sad, the doctors must go to a class where they're trained to speak in such a way, because they're always obviously worried, it seems, that they're covering themselves constantly on how they speak to you. It's like CYA. That's what I picked up on.
Yeah, I think that happens.
They speak in what ifs and this, but we don't know for sure, and we've got to,
Yeah, I think that happens, but I'd rather see that than the ones who, and believe me, they're still out there because we see them, the ones who don't give the patient the time of the day, the ones who ignore, the ones who minimize a patient's complaints. There's some pretty bad actors out there. Yeah.
So, Pete, give us some takeaways as that experienced attorney who's done both sides and now leading a premier catastrophic injury medical malpractice firm.
Well, I'll tell you, maybe this is a good segue to the end point there. The group that I've been involved with and have been the most proud to be involved with in my career is ABOTA, that you know about, the American Board of Trial Advocates. And so, first of all, for those who don't know, it's a national organization made up of trial attorneys, and its primary mission is to promote and preserve the right to a trial by jury and the standards of professionalism for attorneys. We also advocate for judges who can't speak for themselves when somebody criticizes them unfairly. So we work hand in hand with the judiciary, each of our local chapters with each of our local courts. But the reason that I'm so proud to be a part of it, which I have been now for many years, I think 13, 14 years, is it's made up equally of plaintiff's attorneys and defense attorneys. You can't apply for membership. You have to be proposed by somebody. And if you're proposed and if you're voted on, you get the required amount of votes, you then have to submit the application, and you have to have certain standards. Back when I joined, you had to have 20 jury trials as a lead attorney.
It used to be 20.
Yeah.
Now it's
it went
10.
down to 10, and I think there's a thing for 7, but there's extra points for long trials, which is unfortunate, but it's also understandable. People just don't get as many chances to try cases, especially young attorneys now. So it's a bit of a problem, and you don't want to bar people who are otherwise good, qualified people because the standards aren't quite the same as before. And when I had tried 20 jury trials at a young age, others who are just as worthy of being there, they just don't have that opportunity. So ABOTA is trying to adjust for that. But the end result is you got a group of people there who can speak from experience because they've got enough experience trying these cases. They know what it's like to be in front of a jury. They know what it's like to have the pressures of a judge and a jury and all of those things going on. And we're collaborating. We're putting on programming for teachers, for students, for professionalism things for other attorneys. And we're working together, plaintiffs' attorneys and defense attorneys. And it reinforces the thing that I was talking about earlier with you, which is Well, you know you've got the best of the best in there because it's awful hard for them to get in the first place. And so there they are, and there we are, working with each other, being friendly, having dinners together, socializing, meeting spouses, all of this while tomorrow morning I've got a hearing against this person in a huge, really important case that I'm going to fight like crazy on. Well, guess what? You can do that. You can do that. You can have professional and social relationships with people, and you can still fight like crazy as a real advocate for your client against them if you do it the right way. So that's why I love Abota, is because we see it every time we meet. It reinforces it, and it keeps us honest. Sometimes maybe I am getting a little upset at that person, and if I see them at an Abota meeting and we sit down over dinner, well, maybe at the end of that dinner we come away with a little bit of a détente, and we realize let's fight the right fight tomorrow.
That reminds me of a book I read, or at least part of it, Reagan and Tip O'Neill back in the day, and how they would fight in the daytime, but afterwards they'd get together and they'd hang out and have a drink or smoke a cigar or whatever it was. But I mean, I get it.
Yeah, so it's just important. I don't know. It just seems like a better way to live life, The fire and brimstone, it wears on you. It ages you.
Yeah, can you imagine? Pete, if someone wants to get a hold of you, how do they go about doing that?
Well, Kelley Uustal is everywhere you'd want to look. If you just punch us in on the internet, you'll find Kelley Uustal. Our number's right there. You can always find me.
Wonderful. Thank you for visiting with us, educating us on both sides of trial attorneys, and I look forward to seeing you again.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks.